Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I'm going to start off today inshallah ta'ala with a hadith that's narrated by Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. It's a hadith that Imam Ahmad narrates in his Musnad that he says was about Ash-Shafi'i, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahumma hdi Quraysha. O Allah, guide Quraysh. فَإِنَّ الْعَالِمَ مِنْهُمْ يَسَعْ طَبَاقَ الْأَرْضِ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. Allahumma hdi Quraysha. فَإِنَّ الْعَالِمَ مِنْهُمْ يَسَعْ طَبَاقَ الْأَرْضِ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. Which means, O Allah, guide Quraysh, for the science of the scholar that comes from them will encompass the entire earth. And in one narration, the Prophet ﷺ said that the first part of Quraysh tasted bitterness. Let the last part of Quraysh taste reward. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that this is talking about Imamuna Shafi'i, that the Prophet ﷺ was talking about, and Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. And this is something that multiple scholars, and Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, who also narrates this hadith, says that Muntabiq ala Shafi'i, this is talking about Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, we're going to cover half of Imam Ahmad in Ash-Shafi'i anyway, because it's his teacher. And many of the narrations about Ash-Shafi'i are from Ahmad. He says, إِذَا سُئِلْتَ عَنْ مَسْأَلَةٍ لَا أَعْرِفُ فِيهَا خَبْرًا. He said, خَبْرًا, if I'm asked about a mas'ala, لَا أَعْرِفُ فِيهَا خَبْرًا, and I don't know the answer to it. And خَبْرًا here means a hadith. I don't have a hadith to answer that question. And then he says, what's that? Mas'ala. If I'm asked about a question and I don't know a hadith to answer it with. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah is saying, if I'm asked a question I don't know a hadith to answer with, he says, أخذت فيها بقول الشافعي لأنه إمام عالم من قريش. He said that I always take the opinion of Ash-Shafi'i because Ash-Shafi'i is a scholar and he's the Imam from Quraysh. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah used to refer to him as the Imam from Quraysh that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was speaking about. Also, Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned that within every 100 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends at the head of that 100 years, at the head of that century, a mujaddid, a reviver, who would revive something, renew something of the religion for the people. And almost unanimously, the scholars say that the first one was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and the second one was Ash-Shafi'i. In fact, Ahmad rahimahullah, he was asked, are you the mujaddid? You know, subhanAllah, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah also can make that claim, right? That he was possibly a person who renewed and revived the religion. And some other scholars said it was actually Ahmad. But Imam Ahmad said, La wallahi fahuwa Imam Quraysh. He said, no, I swear by Allah, it's the Imam of Quraysh, it's Imam al-Shafi'i. That Imam al-Shafi'i was the mujaddid of the century. So this is a man, subhanAllah, that has gained, like everyone else, the respect of everyone, all of his peers, all of his students. And he has the fortune of being sandwiched in between two of the Imams. And what that means is, his teacher is Imam Malik, his student is Imam Ahmad. Shaykh Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti, rahimahullah ta'ala, he used to say, Aina Ahmadi wa Aina Maliki, hatta akun ana Shafi'i. Right? Because if you have a teacher like Imam Malik and you have a student like Imam Ahmad, you're set. So he's sandwiched in between two of the great four Imams. He's the student of one of them and the teacher of the other one. Now, when Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, when we talk about him, his lineage is the richest of them all. Okay, so his lineage actually goes back to one of the Sahaba. And this Sahabi, his name was As-Sa'ib ibn Ubayd al-Hashimi. As-Sa'ib ibn Ubayd al-Hashimi. This is Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah's grandfather. As-Sa'ib is Imam Ash-Shafi'i's grandfather. He was one of the cousins of the Prophet ﷺ, and he had an extreme resemblance to the Prophet ﷺ. Physically, his appearance was like the Prophet ﷺ. From far away, if you saw him, you thought he was Rasulullah ﷺ because of how much he resembled the Messenger ﷺ. As-Sa'ib was fighting against the Muslims on the day of Badr, and he was captured on the day of Badr. And he ransomed himself. When the Prophet ﷺ told the prisoners to ransom themselves, he ransomed himself. And then as soon as he ransomed himself on the day of Badr, he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So he became a companion. He actually accepted Islam on the day of the Battle of Badr. And that's the grandfather of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam al-Shafi'i was born in the year 150 after Hijrah. Now I don't expect you guys to remember this, but one great Imam died in that year of 150 after Hijrah, and that was Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. So the same year that Imam Abu Hanifa passed away was the same year that Ash-Shafi'i was born. In fact, to make it even more amazing, there's a narration from Rabi' ibn Suleiman. He said that the same day that Imam Abu Hanifa died was the birthday of Imam Ash-Shafi'i. Allah took one and He gave another. Subhanallah. I mean, just think about how amazing that is. So this is a very interesting correlation already, and that's why you see on this chart even that Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i are right at each other. So he was born into the turbulent times, but Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala was not born in Iraq. He wasn't born in Medina. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala is from Gaza. He's from Palestine. He was born in Gaza. And in a particular area of Gaza which is called Asqalan. Asqalan is modern day Gaza, but Gaza was a bigger place. Asqalan was a specific place in Gaza. And Gaza was called Gaza to Hashim. The meaning of the word Gaza, by the way, is Gaza to Hashim. It's the place of Hashim, because the grandfather of the great grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, Hashim, they are all Banu Hashim, he actually died in Gaza. Okay? He was on a business trip to Gaza. And he died in Gaza, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to liberate it. It's a great land, it's a rich history. May Allah liberate all of Palestine, but Gaza has a very rich history, like many of the areas of Palestine do. So he's born in Gaza, and his father is from Banu Muttalib. Banu Muttalib. Now, Banu Muttalib, if you remember in the boycott on Rasulullah ﷺ, there were two tribes that were boycotted, Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib, because they're basically the same tribe. They connect from Abd Manaf, all right, the great-great-grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ from Abd Manaf, and they are cousins. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he used to call them Dhawil Qurba, that they are our family. Banu Muttalib is like Banu Hashim. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّهُمْ لَا يُفَارِقُونَ فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ وَلَا فِي الْإِسْلَامِ. They never left us in Jahiliyyah, nor did they leave us in Islam. إِنَّمَا بَنُو هَاشِمْ وَبَنُو مُطَّلِبْ شَيْءٌ وَاحِدٌ. Verily, Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib are one tribe. And Rasulullah ﷺ, he clasps his hands like this to show the closeness of Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib. So he's related to the Prophet ﷺ. He's from that tribe. He is Al-Fata Al-Muttalibi. That's how he'll be recognized as, because of his honorable lineage. He is from Muttalib. So he's related to the Prophet ﷺ. He's born in Gaza. Now his father passed away when he was only 1 or 2 years old. So he doesn't remember his father. His name, by the way, his name is Muhammad ibn Idris. Muhammad ibn Idris. So Idris passed away when Imam al-Shafi'i was only 1 or 2 years old. So Muhammad ibn Idris, who's a Shafi'i, is left as a widow. Is left as an orphan in Palestine. His mother is a widow. And his mother is also related to the Prophet ﷺ. Her name is Fatima bint Abdullah bint al-Hasan ibn al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. So she's the great-granddaughter of al-Hasan, the son of Ali. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them. So she's Fatima, the daughter of Abdullah, the daughter of al-Hasan, the son of al-Hasan, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So his mother also comes from that noble lineage. And, her family, most of them settled around the area of Mecca, and they came from Yemen. Okay, so most of her family in particular, she's from the tribe of Banu Azd. And Banu Azd, has, for the most part, they come from the area of Yemen. And she decides to take an Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, to Mecca. And when she was asked why, she said that she wanted to connect him to the lineage of Bani Hashim. She wants to take him back to his roots, and she wants to connect Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala to his tribe. so that he can properly learn the religion. And subhanAllah, I mean, this is really an amazing thing. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says she was a abida. She was a worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sabira, a very patient woman, steadfast. She traveled with her 2-year-old baby. All she had was a Shafi'i, by sea, by land, all by herself. No help whatsoever. She took her baby and she made her way from Gaza all the way to Mecca. And Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that my mother said to me, and this is a beautiful mother, subhanallah. She said to me, Ya Muhammad, inna fuqara wa laysa lana mal. O Muhammad, we are poor people and we have no money. وَقَرَّرْتُ أَنْ لَا أَتَزَوَّجَ لِأَجْلِكَ. And she said, I've decided I'm not going to get remarried because I want to focus on you. So his mother actually never got remarried. She said, I just want to focus on you. She says, وَقَدْ نَذَرْتُكَ لِلْعِلْمِ فَعَسَى أَنْ يَجْمَعَ اللَّهُ بِكَ شَمْلَ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. She said, I've dedicated you to knowledge, hoping that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring about the greatness of this ummah through you, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would combine essentially all of the great schools, all of the great ulama would combine their knowledge in you. This is the sincere dua of a mother and the sincere effort of a mother. You know, a single mom takes a Shafi'i to Mecca, and they didn't have any money. She barely made it to Mecca, and she, you know, basically a Shafi'i is in the same situation as the Prophet ﷺ in a way, in the sense that, you know, he has a very noble lineage, but he has no money whatsoever. So they go to Mecca, they get to Mecca, and his mother Fatima al-Azdiya, she sets up a little home. She connects with some of the relatives of her deceased husband, and they take care of the basic necessities for them. And she tells the Shafi'i to go into to find the halaqat. All right, now go find the classes. So Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he goes and he starts sitting in the halaqas, and he had, very beat up clothes, right? He's very poor. And he doesn't have any money to pay to get into any of these, classes. He doesn't give any money to his teachers. So he just goes in and he starts trying to sit in these halaqas, and he feels like, no one wants to give him any attention. He feels like he's just being neglected because he's just a poor kid. Just imagine the scene. You have all these halaqas going around the haram and in Mecca, and then you have this poor child that no one knows that just comes and sits down and gets no attention whatsoever. So he went back to his mom and he said, I don't want to go to these teachers anymore. He says he said about the particular teacher that he was sent to, he says, إِنَّهُ يَتَجَاهَلُنِي. He's acting like I'm not even there. Right? He's completely ignoring me. And I have nothing to give him. I can't pay him. I can't, there's nothing I can do to make him start paying attention to me. So she said, the mother of a Shafi'i, Ya bunayya tahaya lil ilm. Present yourself to knowledge. Qala kayf. How am I supposed to do that, Ya Ummi? How am I supposed to do that? She said, when you enter with such adab that he won't even feel your entrance. Don't even let him feel your entrance. And listen in a way that he doesn't even think you're there. Meaning it doesn't matter if he's not giving you attention. Focus on him teaching the other students and giving attention to the other students, and just listen. Try to absorb it all, even if he's not going to give you his personal attention. So Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala says that, I started to do that. I just go in and I just listen to him talking to the other students, teaching the other students, doing muraja'a with the other students, going over things with the other students. And he was memorizing everything that he was saying to all the other students. And he was memorizing the ayat. So for example, if he tells the student, go memorize Surah Ali Imran and come back, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala would remember which student he told to memorize Ali Imran, and he'll memorize Ali Imran from listening to the recitation. Then the students start to realize that Imam al-Shafi'i is just sitting there absorbing all of this. And Imam al-Shafi'i started to go to the students when the teacher would take a break, and he'd say that, the Shaykh told you to memorize such and such and such and such, and he'd go over it with him. So al-Shafi'i started to build his credibility with the other students. So when the teacher, would go on break, essentially al-Shafi'i was becoming the unofficial teacher of the majlis, and he was, a young child at that point, right? But he's becoming their unofficial majlis. So whenever the teacher of that majlis, he came back and he realized that al-Shafi'i was the one that was doing, that was going over with the students, and he was wondering why his students were all of a sudden getting better. right? He was thinking it was him, but he realized it was the effect of this young boy, this little boy. He basically went to a Shafi'i and he started to give him attention. And he accepted a Shafi'i on the basis that a Shafi'i becomes an assistant teacher for him. A Shafi'i was 6 years old. The 6-year-old boy. Now, by the way, everything about a Shafi'i is going to blow your mind. Because he is a genius. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really created this person as a very special person. You know, and whenever a Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, you know, came to the teacher, and he didn't have anything to pay him with, the teacher said, لا يحل لي أن آخذ منك شيئا. He said, it's not halal for me to take money from you. I'm not going to take anything from you. Just teach. So he would use a Shafi'i to teach, and a Shafi'i would correct him at the age of 6 years old. At the age of 7 years old, he completed his memorization of the Quran, sometime before the age of 7, in fact. And at the age of 9 years old, you know, what do you think was the famous text in the Muslim world at that point? The Muwatta. So Imam al-Shafi'i said that we were too poor for me to write down the Muwatta or for me to copy the Muwatta from anyone. Essentially what they used to do is they'll take the Muwatta of Malik and you'll copy it down, or you'll have a professional copy it down, right? You'll go to the Kinko's of that time or whatever it is, get it all copied, scanned, or whatever it may be, and then you take it yourself. And Imam al-Shafi'i says that my mother, and this is really, subhanAllah, it's amazing. He says that my mother, the way that I had paper, he said my mother would go to the dumpsters in Mecca and collect the old government papers. And she'd collect i'idham. My mother, you know, she'd collect bones and papers and camel skins and leather and all kinds of things just for me to be able to write. And we couldn't afford ink. So she would ask the ministers as they were finishing, you know, with their ink or whatever it is, if they could spare some ink for a Shafi'i. So a Shafi'i didn't have any money. His mother was collecting all of these, you know, random scraps for him to be able to write on. So he wanted to memorize the Muwatta. He wanted to learn the Muwatta. So he asked some of the students if, you know, if he could have it, and he couldn't afford to buy it. He couldn't afford to write it all down. So he asked one of the students, "Can I borrow your Muwatta? Can I borrow it from you?" And Imam al-Shafi'i took the entire Muwatta and he memorized it in 9 days. And he was 9 years old. He gave it back to him. 9 days he'd memorized the entire Muwatta. That's really not easy. That's extremely difficult. That's even more than the Quran, right, in terms of the difficulty of it. And his mother started to pursue the ulama on his behalf. Even actually his mother initiates the contact with Sufyan ibn Uyayna, a great scholar of the time. She initiates the contact with Imam Malik. His mother is the one that's going around basically while he's dedicating himself to these halaqat and going to these different ulama and asking them, you know, to take in her son and to spend some time with him and things of that sort. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he's a 9-year-old wonder. I mean, it just doesn't make sense how this young boy has so much intelligence and so much eloquence. He had the most beautiful qira'ah of Quran. So, you know, back then, it's sort of like here, right? You got the young boy that has the amazing recitation of the Quran. You know, Imam al-Shafi'i was that boy. People would come to the house of a Shafi'i just to hear him recite the Quran. He would be asked to open up al-majalis, to open up all gatherings and things of that sort with the recitation of the Quran. So he had that beautiful voice. But what did his mother really want him to focus on in the very beginning? She wanted him to focus on learning the Arabic language properly. So she actually told him to spend most of his time with the tribe of Al-Hudayl. And Hudayl is the tribe of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Hudayl is a Yemeni tribe, and Hudayl was the tribe of Ibn Mas'ud, and they had the absolute, you know, most pure Arabic language of the time. So she tells a Shafi'i, go and focus on learning the Arabic language properly. A Shafi'i spent a total of 17 years, not only with them, but with learning Arabic from the Hudali tribe, learning Arabic from Hudayl. He spent 17 years learning it from them, learning the poetry, learning grammar, learning how to properly, you know, express himself, learning literature. And subhanAllah, that's why a Shafi'i really, when it comes to the Arabic language, a Shafi'i's language was so beautiful and so perfect that later on when he became a alim and he had his majalis and he had his gatherings, people that weren't even religious would come and attend his gatherings. And Imam al-Za'farani, he said that, you know, we would ask them, we're like, you guys aren't even interested in ilm. Like, who are these people that are coming to his lectures? to attend his lectures that have no interest in knowledge whatsoever. They said, we just come here to hear his Arabic. Just love listening to his Arabic. SubhanAllah, the way that he spoke Arabic was just so amazing that we just want to come sit and listen to him speak. So Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, and the beauty of it is that he actually tells the story of himself. He says, أَقَمْتُ فِي بُطُونِ الْعَرَبِ 20 سَنَةً. He said that I spent I spent amongst the best of the Arabs. في بطون العرب, technically, obviously, it means the stomach of the Arabs, right? But the idea here is that I was learning the thick of the Arabic language. I was learning it at that time. And he says, أخذ أشعارها ولغاتها, that I was learning all of its poetry, and I was learning all of its dialects, and I was learning all of its languages. So he learned all of the different dialects of the Arabic language, and he learned all of the different ways to speak. And he says that I mastered seeking knowledge, and I mastered horse riding, and I mastered archery. Throwing arrows, rami. Okay? So he says, كانت نهمتي في الرمي وطلب العلم. He said that I was an expert, or I had a desire to learn and to throw arrows, to basically get used to throwing arrows. He says, فنلت من الرمي حتى كنت أصيب من 10 He said that I got to a point with my throwing arrows that basically I was able to hit 10 out of 10 every time. Then when he's telling the story, سكت عن العلم. He didn't say anything about the knowledge part. And one of the students said to him, أنت والله في العلم أكبر منك في الرمي. That what you were able to achieve in your knowledge is far greater than what you were able to achieve with al-rami, all right, with throwing arrows. So he masters these different things, and this is a very consistent theme, and it's something that we see with the Imam al-Bukhari as well, right? The young boy, the young man that just masters everything. Everything he touches, he masters. Imam al-Shafi'i masters the recitation of the Quran. He masters the Arabic language. He masters the Muwatta of Malik. And subhanAllah, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the descriptions of him is that he actually used to get bored because he'd finish all of his material too quickly. So he'd get bored in his halaqas because he just mastered it right away, and he knew more than all of his teachers. So Imam al-Shafi'i just absorbs it all, and he couldn't, he was running out of things to write on. So he says that, he says, لما خرجت من الكتاب, when I used to leave these places, he says, كنت أتلقت الخزف والدفوف وكرب النخل وأكتاف الجمال أكتب فيها الحديث. He said, then I just found myself obsessed with hadith. So he said, I started collecting whatever I could, the bones, the leather, the shoulders of the cat, whatever it was that I could get from any animal, any bone, any piece of skin, anything that I could write on, I just started writing a bunch of ahadith. He dedicated himself to hadith. And he also mentions when he lazimtu Hudayla, he says that whenever I was with Hudayl, the tribe of Hudayl, he says that بقيت فيهم 17 سنة أرحل برحالهم وأنزل بنزولهم. So he learned a sense of independence as well, in the sense that when he was with them, with Hudayl, he learned, he became such a part of the tribe that he was traveling with them, he was living in their homes, he was gaining a sense of independence. He was learning how to scrap for himself as well. So he used to go and collect the wood for his house, because his mother didn't have anything to make. So he'd go and collect whatever he could, some food or some drink or things of that sort. And as he began to get more famous, all right, other students of his as well, they used to kind of give him gifts and things of that sort. So they survived off of these small gifts. A gift of bread, a gift of dates. And he said, subhanAllah, every day when I came home, me and my mother didn't know what we were going to eat that day. So subhanAllah, the thought at night was, after all of these halaqas, was, how are we going to survive tonight? What are we going to eat? And every day Allah provided something different. And he said, we never complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it was a glass of milk that was sent to our house, we took it. And if someone sent us a loaf of bread, we split it and we took it. He's very close to his mother, subhanAllah, and we'll see this throughout his entire life. It's just him and his mom. If someone sent us one date, a tamra, we split the date and we both ate half. So he said every night we used to wonder what Allah was going to send us that night, and it was always something else, it was always something random. So he lived in great poverty, but that didn't deter him. And when he used to tell his mom, let me spend some more time going out and doing more things, his mom used to say, you focus on what I brought you here for. You focus on al-ilm. I'll take care of that. I'll be fine. Now, at the age of 15 years old, he was officially licensed by the Mufti of Mecca. at the age of 15 years old. So he was officially given ijazah to give fatwa by the Mufti of Mecca. At that time, the Mufti of Mecca was named Muslim ibn Khalid az-Zinji. Muslim ibn Khalid az-Zinji, and he was the Mufti of Mecca. And he's also from Africa. Like Ata ibn Abi Rabah, he's also from Africa. SubhanAllah, the first two muftis, if you will, in the era of the Tabi'een and the Salaf were both from Africa. You guys remember, I think when it was Sheikh Adil al-Kalbani became the Imam in Mecca, and they called him the Saudi Obama or whatever it is, right? Because the first black Imam of the Haram, like you've got to go way back, buddy, to see the first black Imam of the Haram. The first two muftis of Mecca were from Africa. So Muslim ibn Khalid az-Zanji, rahimahullah ta'ala, was a great scholar, was someone that was recognized, and he had the highest fatwa. At that time, he had the highest fatwa in Mecca. And he licensed an Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala in the Haram to give fatwa at the age of 15 years old. So he memorizes, he's only 15 years old, he already memorizes the Quran, he already memorizes the Muwatta, he's already mastered poetry and the Arabic language and grammar and a hadith. He's only 15 years old. So what was it like when al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala was giving you a lecture? On top of that, Imam al-Shafi'i looked younger than his age. Imam al-Shafi'i had a baby face his entire life. Okay? He never grew a beard more than a few hairs off of his chin. He didn't have, when you read about Imam Malik or Abu Hanif or Imam Ahmad, you read about a big beard. With Imam al-Shafi'i, his beard was always pretty small. He looked young his entire life, didn't have much facial hair, right? And subhanAllah, we find that this also connects him, by the way, to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. It's interesting, as I said, that all of these Imams found themselves following in the footsteps of one of the Abadila. Ibn Abbas was that kid too, that was just amazing and blew everyone away. And the fiqh of Mecca is the fiqh of Ibn Abbas. So the first fiqh he learned was the fiqh of Ibn Abbas. And so Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala is sitting in the Haram. I just want to put you guys in this scenario. He's sitting in the Haram, and it's Ramadan, and he's doing a class on fiqh as-siyam, the fiqh of fasting in Ramadan. And while he's in this class, he takes his water and he starts sipping his water. And they're like, that makes no sense whatsoever, right? How is it possible that this man is drinking water while teaching us the fiqh of fasting in Ramadan? So they asked him, they said, what is it, how is it, ya Imam, how is it that you're drinking water? He says that, I still haven't reached my puberty yet. I'm not baligh yet. And he said that it's hot outside, and I find it difficult to teach you guys for all this time while not drinking water. Can you imagine in the Haram, Imam al-Shafi'i, a boy who hasn't reached puberty, teaching the kibar of Mecca, teaching the elders of Mecca fiqh of fasting, and I just got tired because it's hot. And I just wanted to drink some water. And subhanAllah, Shafi'i learned something there, by the way. He had a policy which was never ask him his age. If you asked a Shafi'i his age, he told you to mind your own business. Okay? And this actually happened in this one, and it seems in this majlis that someone said to him, how old are you? He said, istaqbil ala sha'nik, mind your own business. And he told him why. He said, because I heard Imam Malik, that if Imam Malik was asked about his age, he would tell people to mind their own business. So he said, I'm just doing what my sheikh told me to do, mind your own business. He said, because when the alim is asked about his age, either the young people will devalue him or the old people will devalue him. So in essence, if he's too young, the elders would say, he's just a little kid. And if the youth ask him and he's too young, then the youth will say, he's just like us. So he said the alim just maintains his ambiguity here. All right. So he said that anyone who asked him his age, he would just say, mind your own business. Now, al-Shafi'i rahimahullah also had something that he used to do, and this is really, really amazing. His memory was so photographic that when he held the mushaf, he used to cover the sides of the page. He used to cover one page at a time. And they asked him why, and he said, because if I look at the mushaf when it's open and both pages are spread out, then I'm going to memorize it across. He just looks at the page and memorizes it. So he needed to cover the other side of the mushaf because he was just looking at it and he had such a photographic memory. So this is Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. He gains prominence in Mecca before he even reaches puberty. At the age of 15, he is the right-hand man of the Mufti of Mecca. And at that point, as he's in Mecca, he says that فَلَمَّا رَجَعْتُ إِلَى مَكَّةَ جَعَلْتُ أَنْشُدُ الْأَشْعَارَ وَأَذْكُرُ الْآدَابَ وَالْأَخْبَارَ وَأَيَّامِ الْعَرَبِ. He said that when I was in Mecca, as I was in Mecca and when I was with Hudayl and these types of things, he said, I learned the poetry of the Arabs. I learned the literature of the Arabs. I learned the history of the Arabs, Ayyam al-Arab. I knew all of the history of the tribes, al-Ansab, the lineages and things of that sort. He says, فَمَرَّ بِي رَجُلٌ فقال لي يا أبا عبد الله عز علي ألا يكون مع هذه اللغات وهذه الفصاحة والذكاء دون فقها. A man says to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, and they gave him this kunya when he was young, even though he never had a son that named Abdullah, but this was a habit of the Arabs that they'd give a kunya, they'd give you this nickname even when you were young. So they called him Aba Abdullah. So they said, this man says to him, it would pain me that you learn all of this history, all of this literature, all of this poetry, all of this without truly learning fiqh. Without truly learning fiqh. Now Imam Shafi'i has mastered the fiqh of Mecca. So the man says to him, the man says this to him, and Imam Shafi'i says, فَمَنْ بَقِيَ نَقْصُدْ. Who else are we supposed to seek? Like, I've already done everything I had to in Mecca. I've already got this down. فَقَالَ لِي Malik ibn Anas. He said to me, if you really want to learn fiqh, you need to go to Imam Malik rahimahullah. He says, فَوَقَعَ ذَلِكَ فِي قَلْبِي. That penetrated my heart. And so at the age of 23 years old, he goes to Medina. All right, so this is the year now, 173 after Hijrah. He goes to Medina. And he's been told all of these amazing things about Imam Malik rahimahullah, and everyone's put in his head that Malik is who Malik is, and he's afraid of Malik before he even meets him. He hears about the hayba of Malik, the demeanor of Malik, how difficult it is. So he says, before I go there, I want to make sure I have the Muwatta completely memorized. So he does muraja' of the Muwatta, so that when he goes to Imam Malik, he can say, look, I've memorized the Muwatta. His mother, she actually starts to sell all the little possessions that they had in Mecca. So subhanAllah, his mother's still with him. She sells everything that they have, the house, the small belongings that they have, so that they can make their way to Mecca. And his mother goes to the Amir of Mecca, the governor of Mecca, and says, write a letter to the Amir of Medina to say to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala that this young boy is special and that you should take him in, and so on and so forth. So I want a letter of recommendation. But he doesn't just want a letter of recommendation from the Amir of Mecca. He wants it to go from the governor of Mecca to the governor of Medina, and then the governor of Medina to go with him to Imam Malik. That's how afraid he is of Imam Malik. Like, that's how, and his fear really was being turned away from Malik. Like, we sell all this stuff in Mecca and we make this journey, and then Imam Malik turns us away. Now what's the problem? Imam Malik does not like the governors getting involved in ilm, in knowledge. And we talked about his attitude with the governors yesterday. Imam Malik doesn't tolerate the nonsense of the governors. So you can imagine that when Imam Malik is sitting and he has the governor of Medina come on behalf of someone with a letter from the governor of Mecca, Imam Malik thinks this is just some entitled brat, right? I don't want anything to do with this, and I'm not going to let you guys interfere, right? So Imam Shafi'i thinks this is going to work, right? So he's memorized the Muwatta, he's ready to go. So they go to Medina, and the ruler of Medina, he gets the letter from the ruler of Mecca. He takes Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, and he leaves Imam Shafi'i outside of the house of Imam Malik, knocks on the door of Malik, and he comes in and he starts to read the letter to Malik from the governor of Mecca about Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah being a Sayyid. See, that's the thing. They pressed on the lineage piece of this, which is the wrong thing to do with Imam Malik. That doesn't impress Malik. Say he's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ, he's Muttalabi, he's from Abdi Manaf, he's related to the Messenger ﷺ, and so on and so forth. That doesn't impress Malik. What impresses Malik is the knowledge piece. This letter was just mentioning, that this boy is from a special tribe and things of that sort. So Imam Shafi'i is sort of, listening in from the back, and once the governor finishes reading the letter, he hands it to Imam Malik. Imam Malik crumbles it, throws it to the side, and he says, Subhanallah, أَوَسَارَ عِلْمُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ يُؤْخَذُ بِالْوَسَائِلِ. He said, Subhanallah, have we reached a position where the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ is only taken through the connections, through wasta? Wasa'il, today they say wasta in the Arab world, right? You've got to know the right people. It's not about what you've accomplished. It's not about who you are. It's about who you know that can get you where you need to be. right? Government job, head of a firm, whatever it may be, they say, wasta, wasta. Who do you know that's going to help you out, right? So Imam Malik was furious. He said, is this the way we work now? That, you want someone to learn hadith, so you go and you get the governors to intercede on your behalf? Is this how this works? So the Amir of Medina, he walked out of Imam Malik's house. Now again, this wasn't Imam Malik's personal ego. Imam Malik thought this is just some, prince or whatever it is that's being brought. So as Shafi'i, he entered. He walked into the house of Malik. And he started to speak to Imam Malik himself. And Imam Malik was very old at this time, by the way. These are the last years of Imam Malik's life. And he says, Ya Imam, I'm from Quraysh, wa mata abi, wa hafidhtu al-Muwatta. He says, I'm from Quraysh and my father passed away and I memorized the Muwatta. Accept me. Imam Malik looked at him and he said, what's your name? So he said, Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i al-Qurashi. So Imam Malik said, how much do you love knowledge? I'm not interested in all that stuff. What's your love and desire for ilm? Imam al-Shafi'i said, like a mother who lost her son and has been trying to find her son for years. That's what knowledge means to me. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, al-Shafi'i is telling the story of the first meeting with Imam Malik. He said, Imam Malik looked at me and he stared at me. And he says, وَكَانَ لِمَالِكْ فِرَاسَةً. Malik could read your personality. Imam Malik would look at you and he could read you. So he knew if you were basically, if you were all talk, and he knew if you were real. So Imam Malik looked at him. And Imam Malik said, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, ittaqillah, fear Allah. وَاجْتَنَبِ الْمَعَاصِي, and abandon doing any of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. فَإِنَّهُ سَيَكُونُ لَكَ شَأْنٌ مِنَ الشَّأْنِ. He said, I swear by Allah, Allah is going to make something great out of you. You're going to have a high position. He says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَلْقَى عَلَى قَلْبِكَ نُورًا. Allah has placed the light in your heart. This is just from a few words of a Shafi'i and just looking at a Shafi'i. He said, Allah placed a light in your heart. فَلَا تُطْفِئُ بِالْمَعْصِيَةِ. Don't shut that light by disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't darken your heart that's full of light by the disobedience of Allah. What did we say that Imam Malik said about ilm? لَيْسَ الْعِلْمِ كَثْرَةُ الرِّوَايَاتِ وَلَكِنَّهَا نُورٌ يَجْعَلُهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Ilm is a light that Allah puts in the heart of the believer. So he's telling a Shafi'i, look, you're going to be a special boy. He just looks at him and he can see special things in him. You're going to be amazing. But don't shut off, don't extinguish the light that Allah put in your heart by disobeying Him. Then Imam Malik rahimahullah said, come back tomorrow and sit in the first row. Go home and come back tomorrow and sit in the first row. So this shows you Imam Malik as well. He didn't want to hear all that nonsense about lineage and Amir of Mecca and Amir of Medina. That doesn't impress Malik. He looked at Imam al-Shafi'i and he saw in the eyes of a Shafi'i something special. And he was able to say that. So the next day, Imam al-Shafi'i comes in the halaqah of Malik, and again, Imam al-Shafi'i does some crazy things. Imam al-Shafi'i couldn't afford ink. They used all their money to get to Medina. So Imam al-Shafi'i during the lecture is going, Imam Malik is looking at him like, what is this kid? So he goes up to him and he says, what were you doing? He's like, I was writing down your ahadith. He said, using what? He said, using my spit. I was marking the ahadith that I was memorizing from you using my spit. He said, really? He said, yeah. He said, recite it back to me. So Imam al-Shafi'i recited everything that was said that day back to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And he said, Imam Malik was blown away. So Imam Malik said, you memorized the Muwatta, right? I said, yeah. He said, read it to me. So he said, I kept reading it. And Imam Malik said, read more. So I kept reading. And he said Imam Malik loved his Arabic. So he would say, Ya fata zid. And keep reading. Imam Malik loved to hear this beautiful, eloquent Arabic and this perfection in hadith without making any mistakes. So he said for a few days, every time Imam Malik finished his class after that, he'd tell Imam al-Shafi'i, come forth and start reading to me. And Imam Malik would say, Ya fata zid, keep increasing until nighttime came, and then they went to sleep, and the next day he did the same thing. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala fell in love with Imam al-Shafi'i, and Imam Malik said that I have never had a scholar more brilliant and who had more fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come to me as a student than Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. And he only had him for a few years at the end of his life. And Imam Malik said, this is the best student I've ever had. SubhanAllah. So he expresses that confidence in him. Now, Interestingly enough here, this is a beautiful story as well, that a Shafi'i, he brought his mom with him, and a Shafi'i started to dress in a certain way. All right, because again, in the halaqah of Imam Malik, you're going to dress a certain way. So a Shafi'i starts to wear, the turban and so on and so forth, and he comes to his mother, and he knocks on the door, and his mother answers the door, and she says to him, Bima ji'ta. What did you bring back with you? Meaning spending this time with Imam Malik. So he said, Ji'tu bil ilmi wal adab. I've come to you with knowledge and manners. I've learned knowledge and manners from Malik. She said, Irja' lam tajitni bi shay. She said, go back, you did not come with anything. So Imam al-Shafi'i goes to Imam Malik now, like, I went to my mom and she said to me, what did you come with? And I said, al-ilm wal-adab, knowledge and manners. And she said, you haven't learned anything. So Imam Malik rahimahullah said, go back to her again. And when she asks you what you came with, say, ji'tu bil-adabi wal-ilm. I've come back with good manners and with knowledge. Why? Because Imam Malik remembers that his mother used to say, اذهب إلى ربيعة فخذ من أدبه قبل علمي. When his mother used to put the turban on him, she would say, go to Rabi'a and learn from his manners before his knowledge. Ash-Shafi'i's mom is just like Malik's mom. So Malik says, try this. Ash-Shafi'i goes back to his house, says, what did you come with? He says, al-adabi wal-ilm. Good manners and knowledge. So when he did that, she opened the door and she hugged him and she embraced him, and everything was okay. All right? And subhanAllah, Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, this is very beautiful, that Shafi'i, despite being the scholar that he was, he used to frequently quote his mom in his lectures. Right? Meaning he'd say that my mom told me this, my mom told me that. And he would say, Ummi qalat li, my mom told me this. So he was a mama's boy in that sense. And he had no shame saying that my mom said this to me and my mom said that to me. Not a sheikh fulan said this sheikh said that. No, my mom said this. So he said, my mom told me not to trust those whose words change between two Jum'ahs. So if a person's words have already changed between two Fridays, my mom told me not to trust them. So he would quote his mother in his lectures as well, subhanAllah. Now, Malik and Shafi'i, they have an interesting relationship, because Imam Malik, again, he's very, very, very old. This is towards the very end of the life of an Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. In total, they're only going to spend 6 years together. It's only 6 years. And as we said, Malik sponsors him and he sponsors his family. He takes care of him and he takes care of his mom. But what was their relationship like? Imam Malik rahimahullah didn't just see Ash-Shafi'i as this very young kid, who has potential. Imam Malik used to have fun with him, in the sense that he used to talk to him, they used to try to solve things together. And both of them had that quality of firasa. Firasa, again, is the quality of looking at a person, and you can tell certain things about them by looking at them. So Imam Malik and Imam Ash-Shafi'i, they would sit and they would see people walk by. And if a person looked, like he was mahmoom, if he had issues and, if he looked like he was concerned, they would figure out what he was concerned about by looking at him. So Imam Malik rahimahullah would say, that look of concern on his face, the man is having financial difficulties. That look of concern on his face, he's having issues in his marriage. And they would basically say it to each other. And then one of the students that's listening to Imam Malik and Ash-Shafi'i, they'd look at people and they were challenging each other's firasa. Right? So one of the students, he says that one time a man passed by and Imam Malik rahimahullah said, that man's a shepherd. Imam Ash-Shafi'i said, no, he's a carpenter. So Imam Ash-Shafi'i disagreed with Imam Malik. And essentially they were agreeing on everything in regards to what's wrong with this man. So this man has financial troubles. He'd be like, you're right. This man has this trouble. You're right. But this time, Malik said shepherd, Ash-Shafi'i said carpenter. So this man, whose name was Al-Aswad ibn Amr, he went to the man and he asked him, what do you do for a living? He said, I used to be a shepherd, but I recently changed to a carpenter. So they were both right, subhanAllah. Just looking at the way the man carried himself, they could tell what type of job the man had. Subhanallah. So Imam Malik and Ash-Shafi'i are very similar in that sense. The way that they had insights and the way that they were deeply perceptive and they were able to look at a person and tell certain things about him. Imam Ash-Shafi'i was shy to disagree with Imam Malik in front of him though. And there's an interesting case that took place. Remember how we talked about strange divorces? Harun al-Rashid telling his wife, that you need to sleep outside my kingdom tonight. Okay? A man comes to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala in front of Ash-Shafi'i and he says to Imam Malik that I think I divorced my wife by accident. He said, what did you say? He said that while I was speaking nicely to her, so it's not like we had a fight, I was speaking nicely to her. I said that you are mutallaqa, you are divorced if you are not more beautiful than the moon. It's just strange stuff, okay? That you're not more beautiful than the moon. So if you're not more beautiful than the moon, then I'm divorcing you. It's like, why would you even use the word talaq there? Right? Why would you even use the word divorce there? So he tells Imam Malik, rahimahullah, I told my wife, because she's not more beautiful than the moon, or if she's not more beautiful than the moon, she's divorced. All right? Now the moon is a pretty magnificent creation. Allah swears by the moon in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal praises it. The Prophet ﷺ praises al-qamar and so on and so forth. So Imam Malik, rahimahullah, said, well, I'm sorry, it is a talaq. It's a revocable divorce. So go back and take her. So this is your first revocable talaq. So you go back, وَرَاجِعْهَا, and take her back. But the divorce still counts. So the man was really sad. Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah was sitting there and he followed the man. And when they were outside of the masjid, he told him, he said, you're not divorced. And the man said, how come? Ash-Shafi'i said, because Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. That man was created with the best of creation. So your wife is more beautiful than the moon in that sense. If you mean it like that, then your wife is better than the moon because Allah Azza wa Jalla says that we created man with the best of creation. Right? SubhanAllah. So the man was relieved, he went home and he wasn't divorced. Imam Malik heard about what Ash-Shafi'i did. And Imam Malik, he didn't get mad at Ash-Shafi'i and say you're undermining me and so on and so forth. And Imam Malik rahimahullah says, Asab al-Fata al-Muttalabi. He's right. The young Muttalabi is right. The young Muttalabi is right. Imam Malik was happy that he figured out a makhraj for that man. He figured out a way out for that man that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala himself did not figure out. So he stayed with Imam Malik rahimahullah for 6 years and he did not leave him. And this is the same thing that Abu Hanifa did with Hammad. He did not leave him until his death. Okay? So Imam al-Shafi'i stuck with him for the last 6 years of his life and Imam Malik rahimahullah passed away in the year 179 after Hijrah. So Ash-Shafi'i at this age is how old? 29 years old. Okay, so he's only 29 years old when Imam Malik passes away. And Imam Ash-Shafi'i always held Malik in very high, at a very high level. He always used to say, هذا قول الأستاذ. This is what the teacher said. This is what the teacher said. When he's talking about things, he says, هذا قول الأستاذ. He did not disagree with Imam Malik much. He would just say, this is what Imam Malik said. Because again, they're from the same school of Ahl al-Hadith. Imam al-Shafi'i is joining the school of Ahl al-Hadith, where they use the ahadith and so on and so forth, and that's how they answer these fiqh masail. And he would say, this is what al-Ustad, this is what Malik said. Now let's talk about some of the special qualities of Imam al-Shafi'i, then we'll go through his travels, because his travels are pretty extensive. Number one, we find that al-Shafi'i, again, when we talk about the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and things of that sort. Ash-Shafi'i was known for his qiyam and he was known for his qira'at al-Quran. His praying at night, as Harun ibn Sa'ad says, كَانَ يُحْيِي اللَّيْلِ. Imam Ash-Shafi'i used to give life to the night by his qiyam. Alright? And he says that he would stand up and pray at night. And Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is one of those things where again people say that's not even possible and so on and so forth. But again, people had barakah in their time. They just had blessing in their time. Don't look at the narration that I'm about to mention to you and say, yeah, we can never do that, and so we shouldn't even try to take a lesson from it. Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala used to recite the Quran once a day. كَانَ يَخْتِمُ الْقُرْآنَ كُلَّ يَوْمٍ. He would start in the beginning of the day and he would walk to the masjid and he was reciting the Quran. As he was walking outside of his halaqah, he's reciting the Quran. So around Maghrib time, he used to already be at the 17th or 18th juz throughout the day, and then he'd finish it off at night. In Ramadan, an Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala would read it twice a day. So he'd finish a khitmah during the day, because you've got to understand, Ramadan back then, all of the halaqat, they paused. There were no majalis of hadith and so on and so forth. People would not sit and learn at that point. They just take their break to recite and do ibadah. So he made it twice a day. Now you could look at that and say, that's crazy, and what am I going to take from that? And that's just demoralizing. But instead, take it this way, that recite a portion of the Quran every day and make sure that you try to double it in Ramadan. We generally see that trend, that the Salaf used to recite twice the amount of Quran in Ramadan that they recited outside of Ramadan. Okay, so you build a consistent regimen and then you increase it when you increase it whenever you reach Ramadan. Ramadan is coming up, so it's a good advice to take right now. And in this fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something happened to him. Remember, Imam Malik told him that be careful, don't extinguish the light in your heart. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, as he was walking, he accidentally saw the leg of a woman. And he was angry with himself. And he was mad at himself, and he said that I messed up, and what am I going to do, and so on and so forth. And again, this is one of those things like, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, we're in trouble. If this is what his issue is, then we're in trouble, right? But again, this is just to appreciate, what takes place here. He goes to Waki' ibn Jarrah. Waki' ibn Jarrah. Waki' ibn Jarrah was a great scholar of hadith. He's one of the teachers of al-Shafi'i, one of the contemporaries of Malik. And Waki' was the man who had a great level of memory, just amazing memory as well. So al-Shafi'i particularly admired him. So he says the famous poem, Shakawtu ila Waki' su'a hifli. I complained to Waki' that my memory was going weak. فأرشدني إلى ترك المعاصي. And so he told me to stop sinning. وأخبرني بأن العلم نورا. And he told me that knowledge is a light. وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَى or لَا يُهْدَى لِعَاصِي. That the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be given to one who is disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was all based on this one incident of him seeing something that he didn't want to see. So this shows you that they connected their knowledge to their ibadah. They connected their knowledge to their worship, and they saw that disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affects your memory. It could actually ruin your knowledge and spoil it. What were some of the manners of al-Shafi'i? Okay, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala did not like arguing. He didn't like raising his voice. He didn't like dignifying the comments that were made towards him. We're going to see that a lot of people were jealous of him. A lot of people were jealous of al-Shafi'i. Why? Because everywhere he went, he blew the people away. And the people forgot their own scholars and they went to him. And the people started questioning their own madhahib. Okay, so if he went to a place that was dominated by the Hanafi school, he was converting them to Shafi'is in the sense that he was changing their perspective on things. Even with Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, with the few disagreements he had with Malik, they were leaving the approach of Imam Malik rahimahullah and they were going to his school. And so a lot of people like to argue with him, and he used to say that arguing in matters of ilm, it hardens the heart and it places hiqt, it places malice in the heart. So he says, I don't bother myself in argument. I don't get involved in al-jidal. So he would not argue with people over that. And he said that one of the ways that you humiliate knowledge. So in the first quote, by the way, it's al-mira'u fil ilmi yuqassi al-qalb. Okay, wa yurithu al-hasad. That to argue too much about knowledge puts, hardens the heart and it places grudges into your heart. And he also said that whenever you argue about knowledge, he says, min idlal al-ilmi an tunadira kulla man nadarak. He says that one of the ways you humiliate knowledge is that you debate with everyone that wants to debate with you. You argue with everyone that wants to argue with you. Okay? So he said, instead, avoid those debates and avoid those arguments that have no good in them. So Shafi'i, who's a brilliant debater, he wouldn't get involved in debating with people that were just interested in fighting and arguing and things of that sort. If it wasn't going to be a productive debate where we're trying to arrive at the truth together, I don't want to have this debate with you. I don't want to have these arguments with you. And in fact, he used to discipline his students. He didn't like his students talking bad about other scholars, and he didn't like his students getting involved in these little fights and things of that sort. So Imam al-Muzani rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, and we're going to talk about al-Muzani, he's one of his greatest students. He says that, I never made al-Shafi'i more angry than when I said about one of his opponents, kadhab. I called one of his opponents a liar. And he said, Imam al-Shafi'i got really upset with me. And he said, don't say that. He says instead, say, hadithahu laysa bi shay. Say that his words in this regard have no merit. Say that his words about this particular issue have no merit. Don't call him a liar. Don't call him a liar. You're better than that. He didn't like people to get involved in those petty disputes and those petty things. And he used to say to people to purify your ears. Purify your ears even from the backbiting of scholars about scholars and students about students. He says, فَسَامِعُ الشَّرِّ شَرِيكٌ لَهُ. The one who hears evil and allows himself to listen to it is a partner in that evil. If you sit there and someone's backbiting and speaking ill about someone, and you're not saying anything about it, he says you are a sharik, you're a partner in that evil and what's being said about that person. So he said, when you hear the students of knowledge and the scholars and so on and so forth, when they start speaking about each other, he said, get up and leave. Don't allow yourself to even hear that, and purify your ears from that. To the point that Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, before every debate, he would make dua that Allah places the truth on the heart and tongue of the other person. Imam al-Shafi'i didn't want to win his debates, he just wanted the truth to be made clear. So Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that every single debate, look at the heart of this man, every single debate, before that debate, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide the other person to the truth. Because I want the truth to be realized, but I don't want it to be because of me. He says, تَمَنَّيْتُ أَنَّ عِلْمِي انْتَشَرَتْ. He said that I wish that all of my knowledge would spread, وَلَا يُذْكَرُ لِإِسْمٍ, and no one would mention my name. SubhanAllah, Shafi'i said, I don't want my name being mentioned with the knowledge. I just want these issues to be made clear. But again, Shafi'i was such a genius that he never lost a debate. Never. He could not lose a debate. Even when he didn't want to win debates, anyone that tried to debate him, from the scholars or students of knowledge, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, blew him away. He just could not be beat in a debate. And he says, Wallahi ma nadartu ahadan fa ahbabtu an yukhta. He said, Wallahi, I never debated anyone. He took an oath. I never debated anyone hoping that they would make a mistake. Okay? And there were a few different incidents that take place. One time Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah was sitting and he was teaching the people. And again, we said there were angry people that used to interrupt even the greatest imams. Someone stood up and said to him, Anta Shafi'i? Are you a Shafi'i? قال نعم. He said yes. He says, إنك فاجر فاسق. You're an evil sinner. Subhanallah, fajir, fasiq. Like those are two really, really heavy words in our religion. You are fajir, fasiq. You're an evil man. And someone who's corrupt and someone who's disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just goes off on him in the middle of his lecture. And Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala says, Allahumma in kana abduka hada sadiqan, faghfir li warhamni wa tub alayya. Oh Allah, if the things he just said about me are true, then forgive me and have mercy on me and accept my repentance. Wa in kana ghayra dhalik, and if he's not telling the truth, faghfir lahu warhamhu wa tub alayhi. Then forgive him and have mercy upon him and accept his repentance. SubhanAllah, look at that answer. Right? Man tawadu'a lillah wafa'ahu Allah. When you humble yourself to Allah, Allah exalts you. He could have responded back at that man and thrown poetry at him that he wouldn't even understand. He could have cursed him out in the Arabic language and he wouldn't have even understood it, even though he's an Arab. Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah says, I'm not going to go there. Says, if he's telling the truth, maybe he's right. Maybe I am fajirun fasiq. Maybe I really am an evil man, and maybe all these adoring followers are ruining me. So he says, if it's true, oh Allah, forgive me. And if it's not true, he didn't say, because Imam al-Shafi'i hated that anyone would say about another Muslim kadhab, that he's a liar. Even in hadith circles, which sometimes it's necessary to say kadhab, that he's a liar, Imam al-Shafi'i hated using the word kadhab. So he didn't say, oh Allah, in kana kadhiban, the way he said in kana sadiqan. If he's, he said if he's truthful. But then instead of saying if he's a liar in the second sentence, he said if he's not telling the truth with what he just said, then forgive him and have mercy upon him and accept his repentance. And then finally, subhanAllah, we find that one time in Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he got into a debate with a man by the name of Abu Musa. And Abu Musa was a great scholar. And Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, essentially, not only did he win the debate, but he really won the debate. The guy was left stunned. And Abu Musa got up and he left without saying salam. And Imam al-Shafi'i, he went running after him and he held his hand. And he said, Ya Abu Musa, ألا يستقيم أن نكون إخوانا وإن لم نتفق في المسألة. He said, can't we be brothers even if we disagree about this issue? Look at this adab. Can't we be brothers? Do we really have to fight like this? Can't we be brothers even if we disagree on an issue? And he held his hand back and he brought him to the masjid and he put him back in his chair and he said, hadith tullaba, go ahead and speak to your students now. I wasn't here to humiliate you or to put you down when we're debating this issue. That wasn't my intention here. One of his children says, ما سمعت أبي, about Imam al-Shafi'i, يناظر أحدا قط وهو يرفع صوته. He said, I've never heard my father raise his voice in a debate. Imam al-Shafi'i was intelligent, skilled, eloquent, very calmly used to address issues. He would not win his debates by shouting down the other opponents. All right? But again, the jealousy grows. And there was a man in the haram, I want you to imagine this, in Medina, who was making dua, all right, out loud, and even in his sujood. Like the narration, what it says here, that this man was putting his face on the ground, and in his sajda, he's making dua out loud. So everyone's hearing him making dua and sajda, and he's in Medina. And listen to what he was saying. He's saying, Allahumma amit al-Shafi'i. Oh Allah, kill al-Shafi'i. And listen to his reasoning. He says, حَتَّى لَا يَذْهَبَ عِلْمُ مَالِكَ, so that people don't forget the knowledge of Imam Malik. So he's saying al-Shafi'i is ruining Malik's madhab now. He's taking Imam Malik's place, and he's a hardcore Maliki. So he said, oh Allah, kill al-Shafi'i so that we don't lose the knowledge of Imam Malik rahimahullah. And he's saying it out loud in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ in sujood. So Imam al-Shafi'i, he heard about this. And Imam al-Shafi'i says, and this is a poem, he says, تَمَنَّى رِجَالٌ أَنْ أَمُوتَ. He says that a man is making dua that I die. فَإِنْ أَمُتْ فَتِلْكَ سَبِيلٌ لَسْتُ فِيهِ بِأَوْحَدِ. He said, if I die, the man is going to die too. I'm not the only one that's going to die. He says, فَقُلْ لِلَّذِي يَبْغِي خِلَافَ الَّذِي مَضَى. He says, say to the one that is seeking that which is in the past. In essence, he's trying to salvage something that came from the past and things of that sort. And Imam al-Shafi'i is not interested in challenging Imam Malik. It's his sheikh. He says, تَهَيَّأَ الْأُخْرَى مِثْلَهَا فَكَأَنْ قُدِي. He says, وَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَوْ يَنْفَعُ الْعِلْمُ عِنْدَهُمْ لَإِنْ مِتُّ. He says, لَإِنْ مِتُّ مَا الدَّاعِي عَلَيَّ بِمُخْلَدِي. He says that the one that made this dua against me should know that the one who's making the dua has the same destiny as me. Meaning what? When you make dua against your brother, the dua returns to you. Right? So he's saying I'm not the only one that's going to suffer. مَا الدَّاعِي عَلَيَّ بِمُخْلَدِي. He's going to die too. He's going to suffer from his own dua. So go tell him you're making dua against yourself. When you make dua against your brother or your sister unjustly, you're really making dua against yourself. It's going to return to you. So go tell the man to stop. Don't worry. No one's trying to replace Imam Malik. No one's trying to take the knowledge of Imam Malik. And in fact, subhanAllah, the beauty of this historically is that Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, when he went places, he defended the madhab of Malik. He actually defended Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. So in places where Imam Malik's madhab was suffering, Imam al-Shafi'i actually brought it back to life. We're going to see this in his travels, that when he went to Iraq, he argued like a Maliki. All right? He said that, this is what Imam Malik said because they were arguing against Imam Malik's aqwal. But Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah he felt that it was no point to get into these arguments and these silly debates. And there's also a poem that he says, يُخَاطِبُنِ السَّفِيهُ بِكُلِّ قُبْحٍ. He says that the ignorant, speaks to me with vile words. He increases, he speaks so rudely. He says, فَأَكْرَهُ أَنْ أَكُونَ لَهُ مُجِيبًا. He said that I would hate to dignify his qubh, his disgust, with an answer. Do you guys already know this poem or something? Just the short part? Okay. He says, so what's the last two things then? Before Yazidu. Before Yazidu. Before Yazidu Safahatu, that's the last line. Or is it Ka'udin Zadahul Ihraqu Tiba? That's the last part. Okay. Yazidu, now you guys confuse me. Yazidu Safahatu Fa'azidu Hilma. He says that he increases in his ignorance. Or you guys translate it for me. He increases in ignorance, so I increase. Okay. And what is the last part of it? Ka'udin? Okay, like incense, that the more that you burn it, the better it smells. Okay? Now all of you that are watching or that are watching the recording are like, what's going on there? Alright, so just a quick translation. The ignorant speaks to me ever so rudely, and I hate to dignify his response by answering him. Like an incense that increases in its beautiful aroma as it burns, or he says he increases in ignorance and I increase in forbearance. Like an incense increases in its beautiful aroma as it burns. So the more you burn me, the more beauty I'm going to show you. Subhanallah. Now Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he also he took a very public stance on two things. He said that, if you're going to advise me in public, don't expect me to listen to your advice. If you have a real advice to give to me, then give it to me in private. If it's going to be a public advice, then I'm not going to take it seriously, because your intention for that public advice is to expose and to humiliate. So if you want me to listen to your advice, then you come to me and you speak to me. Okay? What's another very famous poem about Ash-Shafi'i when it comes to speaking about other people? لِسَانُكَ لَا تَذْكُرْ بِهِ عَوْرَةَ امْرِئٍ. Do you guys know this one? All right, take that, Bayyinah students, all right? لِسَانُكَ لَا تَذْكُرْ بِهِ عَوْرَةَ امْرِئٍ. Translate it. لِسَانُكَ لَا تَذْكُرْ بِهِ عَوْرَةَ امْرِئٍ. Don't use your tongue to mention the awra, the faults of others. فَكُلُّكَ عَوْرَاتْ وَلِلنَّاسِ أَلْسُنُ. You're covered in faults and other people have tongues. وَعَيْنُكَ إِنْ أَبْدَتْ إِلَيْكَ مَعَايِبًا. When your eye falls upon, in أَبْدَتْ إِلَيْكَ, returns to you a shame. فَدَعْهَا وَقُلْ يَا عَيْنُ لِلنَّاسِ أَعْيُنُ. دعها, leave it. وَقُلْ يَا عَيْنُ لِلنَّاسِ أَعْيُنُ. Basically shut it, leave it, and say, O people, other people have eyes too. Other people have eyes too. So other people have tongues and other people have eyes. So if you're going to engage in speaking ill about people and letting your eyes fall upon the shame of others, then it's going to come back to you. So don't try to humiliate people. Don't try to argue with people. And you know, subhanAllah, this is what the Prophet ﷺ said when he guaranteed a home in Jannah, لِمَنْ تَرَكَ الْمِرَاءَ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُحِقًّا. The Prophet ﷺ said, I guarantee a home in paradise for the one that leaves argumentation even when they're upon the truth. And Imam al-Shafi'i, if he wanted to, he could humiliate everyone in his society. Every country he went to, he was superior to everyone there in knowledge and in debate. But al-Shafi'i, instead, using the adab that his mother wanted him to learn as a young child and what he learned from Malik, the manners that he learned, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he did not involve himself in those things. One thing about Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, by the way, as well, unlike Imam Malik now, he kind of has the more of the personality of Imam Abu Hanifa when it comes to his interacting with the people, and particularly his joking. So Imam al-Shafi'i used to joke throughout his majalis. All right, he used to joke throughout his halaqas. This is not like his teacher, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. He used to give all of these funny analogies, and he used to give his students riddles and analogies all the time for them to try to figure things out. Now obviously, this is important to note here when it comes to jokes and these types of things. Some of them probably don't make sense anymore because it's lost in translation, it's lost in context and things of that sort. But the point is that a Shafi'i would constantly, give these types of jokes. So one time a man told him, he said that a man sent his son and he told him to buy me some wood that's 30 yards long. All right? So his son responded that its length is 30, and how wide should it be? How wide do you want the wood? Okay? So they're asking Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, how do you solve this issue? What do you say? So Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that the wood should be as long, or the wood should be as wide as my tragedy in having a son like you. Musibati feek. Okay? And the Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that and he started to laugh. So Shafi'i constantly gives them these riddles, he constantly gives them these issues, and even when he was sick, Rabi' ibn Suleiman said that Imam al-Shafi'i never left al-dhahik, he never left laughter, even when he was very, very, very sick. So he said that I went to him when he was sick, when he was very sick, and I said, قَوَّ اللَّهُ ضَعْفَكَ. May Allah strengthen your weakness. Now you guys realize the problem in the Arabic language here. قَوَّ اللَّهُ ضَعْفَكَ. And Imam al-Shafi'i is an expert in the Arabic language. So he said, al-Shafi'i started to laugh. And he said, you're trying to kill me. You're asking Allah to kill me. And he said, why? He said, no, قَوَّ اللَّهُ ضَعْفَكَ. May Allah strengthen you. He said, no, you're saying, may Allah strengthen the illness on me. You're trying to kill me. He said, instead say, قَوَّاكَ اللَّهُ. May Allah strengthen you against your sickness, against your weakness. So he says that he never left joking. He never left laughing. He had laughter. He had a very light-hearted, majalis, very light-hearted halaqas. And he said that, he would always start off his halaqas to get us awake, basically. He'd give us a riddle. Okay, so he'd give us these strange riddles just to wake us up, just to get us using our brains. Then when our brains were fully functioning, then he gets us into the hadith study. All right, so he wanted you to start using your intellect, using your intelligence, using your reason, and figuring things out. Otherwise, you're just going to be talking to a bunch of people that are looking at you like this. Right? So instead he woke him up that way. All right. He also, one time he was asked, how does Allah punish someone, or how does Allah punish fire with fire? How is Allah going to punish shaitan with fire when shaitan is made of fire? So Shafi'i, he told one of his students, he said, bring me some clay. So the student brought clay and he threw it at the guy. The guy was like, why did you do that? He said, did it hurt you? He said, yeah. He said, what are you made of? All right, so, you know, I just threw something at you that you're made of and it still hurt you. So don't ask those types of questions. You know, why are you worrying about that? If Allah wants to punish fire, Allah will punish fire with fire, just as Allah could punish you with you. All right, so Shafi'i had a very lighthearted way of dealing with his students. And there are multiple narrations of that sort. He also, subhanAllah, one thing about him is also his sadaqah. Very, very charitable man. And the only time they said that his face used to turn red was, you know, out of embarrassment. So they said his face never used to turn red out of anger, but his face would only turn red when someone asked him for money and he didn't have any money to give them. Like he was so ashamed of himself that a beggar came to him or that someone was poor. And Imam al-Shafi'i himself didn't have much money to give to people. So that's the only time that he'd feel ashamed of himself. Okay? Now Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, one thing that distinguishes him from the others, you know, is his amount of travel. And this is also, you can trace the spread of his madhab to him in a way, because al-Shafi'i traveled the entire Muslim world. Right? He goes from all of these different places. So he's already come from Palestine. He's from Palestine. He goes to Mecca. He goes to Medina now. And you know, in that situation now, he's going to start, as soon as Imam Malik passes away, rahimahullah, he's going to start journeying around the world. He didn't want to leave Malik while Malik was alive, because he knew Imam Malik was old, and he knew he had to benefit from whatever was left of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. So for 6 years, he just stuck with Imam Malik, rahimahullah. And some historians, they say that he also traveled because Imam Malik was sponsoring him. So he actually had to go out and look for a job as well. Okay? One thing about him that's also very beautiful, back to his mom, Fatima al-Azdiya, he used to take her permission before every journey, even when he was an old man. All right, so he would go to her and he would ask her permission to travel from place to place, to show her that love and that respect. And you know, the next part of his travel after Medina is going to come to the area of Najran. Najran. Now Najran is the border of Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Modern day Saudi Arabia and Yemen, that's where Najran is. So it's in the Arabian Peninsula, and it's a town that has some history. It's even mentioned in some of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a Yemeni/Saudi place today. All right, it's right on the border. And he was appointed as a judge there, because basically now everyone knew that al-Shafi'i was leaving Medina, and at this point he'd gained prominence. He was the mufti, you know, he was the head you know, mufti, not the head mufti, but the assistant to the head mufti in Mecca. And then with Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala in Medina now. And he was known as the prize student of Imam Malik. So he's now going to accept a position as a judge, as a qadi. And that's going to be a source of income as well. So the governor of Najran, he tells him to come over. And he goes to Najran and he becomes appointed as a judge there. The thing is, al-Shafi'i said to him what Sahnun said in Qayrawan. Sahnun, the student of Malik, said in Tunisia, in Qayrawan. He said to him, look, if you're going to appoint me as a judge, you need to know I'm not going to do you any favors. And if someone from your family messes up, I'm going to prosecute them. So the guy said, okay, fine. The problem is that Imam al-Shafi'i, you know, again, prosecuted some of his family members. Imam al-Shafi'i criticized his policies publicly. So Imam al-Shafi'i drove him crazy because Imam al-Shafi'i was honest. He was a man of integrity, like he learned from Imam Malik. So this is the school of Imam Malik as well, the political influence, that you can be a qadi, you can take your salary from the government, so long as you're going to maintain enough integrity to where you'll still criticize them when they make mistakes and things of that sort. Now the oldest trick in the book, how was Imam al-Bukhari discredited? I'm going to connect some of these things to you guys. How did they discredit Imam al-Bukhari? How did al-Dhuhali discredit Imam al-Bukhari and lead to, you know, mess up his life? He accused him of belonging to a group. All right, you're gonna keep on coming to this. The oldest trick in the book. When you can't debate someone and when you can't beat them intellectually, you say that he's a closet this, he's a closet Wahhabi, he's a closet Salafi, he's a closet Sufi, he's a closet, you know, whatever it is. All right, he really belongs to this group. And then if you really want to get dirty, he's a closet something outside of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So he's really a Shi'i and he's hiding it. He's really from Mu'tazila and he's hiding it. This governor knew that the only way he could discredit Imam al-Shafi'i was that, and he knew that his people would not believe him. So this governor wrote a letter, and this is now in the year 184 after Hijrah. He wrote a letter to Harun al-Rashid, the Khalifa, and he said to Harun al-Rashid that al-Shafi'i is a closet Shi'i and he's planning a revolution against you. This is his way of discrediting him. Now the reason why that had merit to it is because there were 8 or 9 people in Najran that were actually Shi'i and planning a revolution against Harun al-Rashid, against al-Abbasiyah. Alright, now again, Harun al-Rashid was a righteous man, so he quelled almost everything just by his righteousness and gaining the respect of the Ummah, but a few people wanted to overthrow him. So the governor was already going to send those 8 people to Harun al-Rashid. So he arrests Imam al-Shafi'i and he sends him with those 9. So all of these people were tested, subhanAllah. He sends them with the rest of them. And he tells Harun al-Rashid that this man is a Shi'i and this man is trying to overthrow you. Now the reason why this also has some merit to it is that Imam al-Shafi'i is from Ahlul Bayt. Right? He's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. And Imam al-Shafi'i used to talk about, he has poetry for his love for Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Sunnah loves the family of the Prophet ﷺ, by the way. We can't let extreme groups make us extreme on the other side. We've always loved the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So there are multiple poems from an Imam al-Shafi'i, even in a diwan today, where he talks about his love for Ahlul Bayt. So he has one where he says, Al Nabi dhari'ati. He says that, the family of the Prophet ﷺ are dhari'ati. In essence, they're like my reason. It's very hard to translate Imam al-Shafi'i's poetry, by the way, but they're like my reason. They're my purpose for living, if you will. وَهُمْ إِلَيَّ وَسِيلَتي. And they're my connection. He says, أَرْجُو مِنْهُمْ أُؤْتَى غَدًا بِيَدِ الْيَمِينِ صَحِيفَتي. He said that I hope that I meet them on the day of judgment, holding my book in my right hand. In essence, I'm seeking, the love of Allah and the love of His Messenger ﷺ through my love for the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So all of this put together, he makes a case to Harun al-Rashid that this man is a Shi'i, he's trying to overthrow you. Harun al-Rashid has never met him because al-Shafi'i has never been to Iraq yet. Okay? So he might have met him in passing in Mecca and Medina. But the Khilafah al-Abbasiyah is based in Baghdad. Okay? So he sends him to Baghdad in chains. The first time he's going to meet Harun al-Rashid is going to be in chains with these 8 other people. And these 8 other people, they actually were planning a revolution. Al-Shafi'i, as he's in chains, he ends up in the court of Harun al-Rashid, and guess who's sitting in the court of Harun al-Rashid? Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the great student of Abu Hanifa, the second student of Abu Hanifa, who was also a student of Imam Malik. And he came back to Baghdad, and he became a qadi as well. He became a judge as well, and he codified the Hanafi madhab and so on and so forth, narrated the Muwatta. So Abu al-Hasan al-Shaybani sees him and he's like, whoa, this is a Shafi'i. So a Shafi'i starts to speak, and a Shafi'i gives this long, eloquent defense of himself. He mentions all of the family connections between Harun al-Rashid and him. Alright, al-Abbasiyah, because again, he's from Bani Muttalib. So he goes through all of the ways that our lineage meet, and how we're brothers and I would never betray you. Then he starts to go through his love for Ahlul Bayt, but he says that this love is the same love that the Prophet ﷺ had when he held Al-Hasan wal-Husayn. And he said, oh Allah, love those who love them, and so on and so forth. He says the same love as that. Wallahi, it doesn't go further. He gives this long, eloquent defense of himself. Harun al-Rashid, rahimahullah, was very impressed by Ash-Shafi'i. And Ash-Shaybani calls Harun al-Rashid and he says, do you know who that is? He says, no. He says, it's Muhammad ibn Idris. He says, the one you told me about? He said, yeah. So he's already told him about Ash-Shafi'i. He knows Ash-Shafi'i. So he said, this man is a great scholar. He's a great alim. Don't punish him. Don't do anything to him. So instead, look at the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Harun al-Rashid, he says to him, not only are you free, he said, I want you to remain in Baghdad, and I want you to work with Ash-Shaybani. He says to Ash-Shaybani, khudhu ilayk. Take him with you, teach him, make him a judge, whatever it may be. I want to benefit from his wisdom, so I'm keeping you here with me in Baghdad. So it backfired on the governor of Najran that sent him to be killed, to be imprisoned. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that this was the greatest favor that was ever done to a Shafi'i. Because this was the first exposure he had to Madrasatu Ahl al-Ra'i, to the school of Abu Hanifa and to the school of the people of reasoning. This was his first exposure that would broaden his scope. And up until this time, he's only around Ahl al-Hadith. So he's only getting the exposure of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam al-Shafi'i used to say, Asa an takrahu shay' wa huwa khayrun lakum. He used to repeat the ayah of the Quran that you might hate something and it's better for you. He said, Wallahi, no one did a favor for me greater than that governor of Najran. Hina arsalani ila Baghdad. From the time he sent me to Baghdad, he said, I got a free ride. And he said, Harun al-Rashid, listen to what Harun al-Rashid said to him. Harun al-Rashid came to him and he handed him 50,000 dinars. Like you were in chains and you were about to be killed. And instead the Khalifa says, you know what, I'm not going to kill you. Here's 50,000 dinars. Go buy yourself a nice house and, settle down. And dinars are gold coins, so settle down and live dignified. But Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he gave it all away. The guard that was, Harun al-Rashid's guard, he came back to Harun al-Rashid and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, all 50,000 dinars. Yesterday there was a party in front of your palace. He said, why? He said, because Shafi'i was calling all of the beggars and he was just distributing it. He had it, he dumped out all the bags of gold coins and was just telling them all to take it away. So Harun al-Rashid said, maybe he's like Malik. He's a student of Imam Malik rahimahullah, so maybe he thought this was an insult to his dignity and to, that this is some way trying to buy him off and make him friendly to the Khilaf in the beginning. So he gave the guard 50,000 dinars and said, give it to him tomorrow. So Imam al-Shafi'i, the next day the guard goes up to him and he says, this is 50,000 dinars from me. Not from Harun al-Rashid, this is from me. And Imam al-Shafi'i, he smiles and he said, I didn't accept it from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why would I accept it from the guard of Amir al-Mu'mineen? So he said, no, I don't want it. So Shafi'i was trying to establish his dignity. He didn't want to be bought off from the beginning and then expected in a certain way. So guess which house he was going to stay in? He was actually going to move into the house of a Shaybani. You imagine, subhanAllah, the one who, one of the greatest students, the top two students of the Hanafi madhab, who studied with Imam Malik, who codified the Hanafi madhab, narrated the Muwatta, and now Ash-Shafi'i is living in his house. And that was for 3 years. He lived in the house of a Shaybani. And subhanAllah, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, he says that, you could hear their debates, their hiwar going into the late hours of the night. They would just constantly be debating. And he said that Ash-Shafi'i, for those 3 years in Iraq, in Baghdad, all he did was defend the methodology of Malik. So he was basically, because some of the students of Abu Hanifa got their exposure there, but he's now a student of Imam Malik that's in Baghdad. And he says that they used to, subhanAllah, they'd be traveling together. And as they were traveling together, they'd stop and they'd start to have a debate. And when they'd start to have a debate, people would see them debating and they'd call the city to listen to them. So he said people would come and listen to their public debates, Imam al-Shafi'i and Imam al-Shaybani. And he said even Harun al-Rashid, when he heard, he would come and he'd sit down and they'd all listen to them. So they used to constantly debate in a good way, right? The positions of Imam Malik, the positions of Imam Abu Hanifa, this hadith and so on and so forth, the reasoning of it. And Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah says that I used to write all of his knowledge, all of Ash-Shaybani's knowledge. And when Ash-Shafi'i left Baghdad, he had an entire camel that was just full of a bunch of books and papers. And they asked him what it was. He said, that's all of Ash-Shaybani's ilm. That's everything I got from Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani. So you're going to see the interaction now with the madhab. And this is the first time, even though he was debating, and you can kind of see here on this map, by the way, this is the new connection that we have from Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, okay, al-Shaybani, going to Imam al-Shafi'i now. So he learned from Imam Malik, and then he learned from Imam al-Shaybani. Al-Shafi'i said, this is where I gained an appreciation for Abu Hanifa's fiqh. Meaning before that, Imam al-Shafi'i was, very much so settled within the school of hadith, and he didn't really think too highly of the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. I mean, he respected him, but he didn't think too highly of his fiqh. He said, but while I was there for these 3 years, I gained an appreciation. I gained a love for Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, and I gained an appreciation of his fiqh. And that's why Imam al-Shafi'i, when he used to lead the salah in Baghdad, he would lead it in the Hanafi way. SubhanAllah, look at the respect. He would lead it using the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, out of his respect for Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And he said, كُلُّنَا عِيَال فِي الْفِقْهِ عَلَى أَبِي حَنِيفَةِ. We are all dependent children on Imam Abu Hanifa when it comes to fiqh. He gained a massive love and appreciation from Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. So that's the year 183 now the year 186. And realize, by the way, Ash-Shafi'i is still really, really, really young. He's not old. He comes back to Mecca now, the year 186. How old would this make him? 36 years old. He's still a very young man, but he's at this point in Mecca, he is almost unanimously the most famous scholar in the world. 36 years old, he's the most famous scholar in the world. And so when he gets back to Mecca in the year 186, and he has this huge load of books from Ash-Shaybani, and he studied the fiqh of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, everyone, when they heard he settled in Mecca, went and started to flock to Mecca and study with him. And amongst those that went to Mecca to meet him and to study with him, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala. So Imam Ahmad met him for the first time in Mecca, studying with him and spending time with him and things of that sort. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said that I studied the Muwatta of Malik. I said this yesterday, but I'm going to repeat it. I studied the Muwatta of Imam Malik with 17 scholars. I was not satisfied until I studied it with a Shafi'i. That's when I was satisfied. That's when I really gained an appreciation for the Muwatta. So it's in Mecca that Ash-Shafi'i starts his halaqah right next to the Kaaba. The halaqah of Imam Ash-Shafi'i was right next to the Kaaba in Masjid al-Haram. And all of the great scholars of the Ummah used to come and meet him and greet him in Hajj. And they respected him and they held him in high regard. And he stayed like this for 9 years in Mecca. Okay? Then in the year 195, after Hijrah, he returns to Baghdad. He goes back to Baghdad, he goes back to Iraq for another 4 years. All right, so he spent 3 years in Baghdad once, came to Mecca again for 9 years, goes back in the year 195 at the age of 45 years old, very good, to Baghdad. Now unfortunately by that time, Harun al-Rashid had passed away. And in fact, Harun al-Rashid, his son, his son assumed the Khilafah for some time. But his son was Amin. His son was Al-Amin. Harun al-Rashid had a son named Al-Amin. So the last year of those 4 years, because we said Imam al-Shafi'i stayed for 4 years, this time when he went to Baghdad. So the last year of it, which is the year 198, Al-Ma'mun assumes the Khilafah. And Al-Ma'mun is the one that's going to bring about a deviant ideology into the Ummah. So Al-Ma'mun is the first one that's going to introduce, from a government level, the ideology of a group called Al-Mu'tazila. Al-Mu'tazila. And Al-Mu'tazila were the ones, they didn't believe in Qadar, so they denied divine decree. They said Allah doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All right? And they also said that the Quran is makhluq. They said the Quran is created. Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't speak. It's not kalamullah. It's just a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they said that fa'ilul kabir, kafir. So they had some of the, they dipped into, they dabbled into the ideology of the Khawarij. So they said the one who commits a major sin is a disbeliever. They brought their deviant ideology, and Al-Ma'mun was the first one now from Al-Abbasiyah that was sold on it. All right? So when Al-Shafi'i gets to Baghdad, for the first 3 years, he's okay. Now in these first 3 years, this is important now to understand what happens from the year 195 to the year 198. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah dedicates himself to Ash-Shafi'i. All right, he met him in Mecca, and now he's dedicating himself to Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. And it was during this period as well that the first book of Ash-Shafi'i is going to be written. All right. Essentially, there was a great scholar by the name of Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi. And he asked Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he was a scholar of hadith. He said, can you write a book that explains the laws of the Quran, the Sunnah, Ijma', Qiyas, the consensus of the scholars, reasoning, An-Naskh wal-Mansukh, abrogation, how that works, a takhsis versus al-am. We talked about Imam Abu Hanifa's madhab on specific injunctions versus general injunctions. So essentially he's telling him, can you write a book on legal theory? Because we have these, right now we have Al-Muwatta, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, which is those ahadith. And we have the opinions, the Masa'il of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. But can you write a book? Because the Shafi'i now essentially combined the two schools. He combined Ahlul Hadith and Ahlul Ra'i. He took the best practices of both schools, the school of Abu Hanifa and the school of Imam Malik, and he merged them together. He did away with all the misunderstandings and took the best practices of them both. So Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, he's saying, can you just write a book now that explains all of this legal theory? And Al-Shafi'i wrote the very first book in history on usul al-fiqh, which is Ar-Risala. Okay? Ar-Risala. Ar-Risala is the first book in Islamic history which goes through the science of usul al-fiqh, legal theory in Islam, how fiqh is derived. So what Imam Abu Hanifa is to fiqh, Al-Shafi'i is to the science of usul al-fiqh. What Imam Abu Hanifa was to fiqh, Al-Shafi'i was to the science of usul al-fiqh. Okay? And Ibn Mahdi, Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, whenever Al-Shafi'i finished Al-Risala, he read it, and he was so amazed. He says, "Ma kuntu adhunnu anna Allah khalaqa mithla hadha ar-rajul." I didn't think that Allah created a man like this man. Praising Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala and what he was able to do. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that I did not understand a naskh wal mansukh in hadith, like abrogated hadith timelines, or how one hadith abrogates the other, until I studied with Imam al-Shafi'i. So even Imam Ahmad said, before Ar-Risala was written, I didn't understand this subject properly. All right, so Ar-Risala, he reviewed it, by the way, over 400 times. For the rest of his life, he'd constantly review Ar-Risala. As he found certain issues and things that sort point out, he'd add to it. He reviewed it over 400 times. Continues to review it until the end of his life. And the reason why the madhab of al-Shafi'i is by far the most organized madhab from an organization perspective, whether you're Shafi'i or not. All right, even Shah Waliullah Dihlawi, he admits this, by the way. There is no madhab that's more organized and that's more balanced than the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i, because he's the only imam that actually wrote his usul. He actually wrote his methodology of deriving opinions and legal theory and things of that sort. So there's no madhab that's more clear and clarified and more refined than the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. And there are multiple things that were said about this book. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim, he said that if the intelligence of the entire ummah was to be brought together and to be weighed against the intelligence of Imam al-Shafi'i, then it would not be compared. And by the way, this was important in Baghdad, because Baghdad, remember, Iraq is exposed to all these other philosophies and ideas. Ar-Risala was taken back, by the way, to different parts of the world, even to non-Muslim parts of the world, to see legal theory, to study legal theory. Because this was, such a unique work in legal theory. And there is so much depth in it. I think that's my phone. Wow, I can't blame you guys. There was so much depth in Ar-Risala that an Imam al-Muzani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that I've been reading Ar-Risala for 50 years. And he said, for 50 years, I still learn something new every time I study it. I still get something out of Ar-Risala every time I study it. So even a scholar, if he looks at Ar-Risala, he's going to get something out of it each and every single time. And this was the perception, by the way, of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam al-Shafi'i was also a scholar in tafsir, explaining the Qur'an. And that's one of the things Harun al-Rashid loved about him, was his knowledge in tafsir. And it's said about al-Shafi'i that he used to do dawrat in tafsir. He'd go over the Qur'an and he'd explain the entire Qur'an. And every time he explained the Qur'an, he explained it differently, meaning he added to it. So even if you heard his dawrah of tafsir one year, you went back the next year and you learned something entirely different, meaning new, added. And al-Shafi'i was asked why. He said, because every time I read the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I learn something new. So it's not like I'm leaving things out. That you can read the same surah over and over again, and it's still going to benefit you, it's still going to be beloved to you, and it's still going to give you a new level of depth and perception, no matter how many times you've read it. So this puts Shafi'i now in a position where, he's extensively studied the Arabic language, he's extensively studied poetry, he's extensively studied literature, he's mastered the Qur'an, he's mastered hadith, he's mastered the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa, he's mastered the fiqh of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. So he gets to a point now in his life where he's unanimously accepted by all of the scholars of all the different schools. And that's something that he was able to attain that really no one else was able to attain. Meaning all of the scholars would benefit from al-Shafi'i. Essentially, they saw him as reformers in their own madhab. You had the jealous guys and things of that sort, the people that would try to make things up about him and would debate with him. But he was able to take the knowledge of so many of these different people and develop his intellect and so on and so forth, and develop the ummah. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that the scholars of hadith, they criticized Imam Ahmad. Why? Because Imam Ahmad all of a sudden started to just go to the circles of Shafi'i. So the Shaykh of al-Bukhari, okay, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, and Sufyan ibn Uyayna, and so on and so forth, they're like, why are you spending so much time with these people, of fiqh? Why are you leaving al-hadith? And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said to them, he said, look, if you miss a hadith that has a shorter chain, then you'll find it sahih with a longer chain. Meaning I can miss out on some of these majalis of hadith. He said, but if you don't listen to the reasoning of a Shafi'i, the way he reasons through things, you will never be able to find it anywhere else. Meaning I might miss a circle of hadith and then those hadith will be read somewhere else and maybe I'll get an added chain to it. Maybe a student who is sitting in that halaqah will be the narrator of that hadith and there's a longer chain. But he said the fiqh of a Shafi'i, the way a Shafi'i is able to reason through things, you will never find it in any other human being. And subhanAllah, they say that the ulama are those that can truly recognize the ulama. So it was Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala who recognized him in that point. When al-Ma'mun started, I know you guys need a break, sorry. Let me just go ahead and get to the next part of his life and I'll just leave you guys on that for a break. When al-Ma'mun took power, al-Ma'mun was the one that brought that deviant ideology in the last year of Ash-Shafi'i's life. Ash-Shafi'i was 49 years old. He had written a book with his fatawa as well in Iraq that was called Al-Hujjah. Al-Hujjah. So he wrote his opinions in Iraq. He wrote Ar-Risala. He attained a very high position. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah was an up-and-coming scholar and he was a student of Ash-Shafi'i. So Ash-Shafi'i sees this fitna growing. And Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala decides to make the last move of his life, which is a move to Egypt. He decides to move to Misr, to Egypt. Why did he do that? Because Ash-Shafi'i, there are several reasons. Okay? Al-Ma'mun came to him and offered him the position of Qadi. And he knew what that meant. It happened with Abu Hanifa, it happened with Malik, it happened with everyone, that when a deviant Khalifa comes to you and offers you that position, he's trying to validate himself. And if you don't give him that validation, then he's going to torture you. So Ash-Shafi'i knew that the next step after Al-Ma'mun offered him this huge position of Qadi al-Quda, he knew that things were going to get nasty and they were going to get bad. And he also, knew that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah was capable of taking care of Iraq. So he even said to Imam Ahmad, I've left Iraq to you. Meaning Imam Ahmad was capable, and that's what a great testimony from someone like Ash-Shafi'i now. Again, firasa. Imam Malik sees it in Ash-Shafi'i, Ash-Shafi'i sees it in Ahmad and says, I'm satisfied with you being the Imam here in Iraq. I'm satisfied with leaving Iraq to you now. So he sees that, instead of staying here and going through the fitna that's about to blow up, he said, I'm going to leave. And Ash-Shafi'i was very troubled by it. I told you he used to present these riddles in the beginning of his class and so on and so forth. So in the beginning of his class, he said, which ayah in the Quran is an arrow through the heart of the oppressor and is relief in the heart of the oppressed? And they said, which one? He says, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ نَسِيًّا. Your Lord never forgets. Allah never forgets. That's the last thing he leaves the people of Iraq with. And Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he takes off to Egypt. And he says, and this is a very beautiful word, this is a very beautiful poem. He says, قَدْ أَصْبَحَتْ نَفْسِي تَتُوقُ إِلَى مِصْرَ وَمِن دُونِهَا قَطْعُ الْمَهَامَةِ وَالْقَفْرِ. He says that, I made my way out, my nafs started to tell me, I inclined within myself to go to Egypt, even though I'm going to have to go through all these valleys, and it's a difficult journey from Iraq to Egypt. It's not like a journey from Medina to Iraq and things of that sort. This is going to be a very long and difficult journey. He says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا أَدْرِي أَلِ الْفَوْزِ وَالْغِنَى أُسَاقُ إِلَيْهَا أَمْ أُسَاقُ إِلَىٰ قَبْرِ. He said, so by Allah, I don't know if Allah is taking me to a place that's going to make me wealthier and that's going to give me more success, or if Allah is taking me to my grave. And the answer is it was both. SubhanAllah, this is the place where Imam al-Shafi'i is going to refine his ideas and perfect them and successfully get exposure to all of the different madhahib, all of the different great minds in the ummah. He also becomes very wealthy and very successful in Egypt, and this is also the place that he's going to die. So Imam al-Shafi'i sets off to Egypt, and I think I'll give you guys a break here now and we'll talk about his time in Egypt and we'll talk about his teachers and his students and his madhab after the break, inshallah. How long do you guys need? 25 minutes? لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.